Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
How you guys doing? Good. Real honor to be with you here today. I got here early and got some donuts. Anybody else get any donuts? I saved a few. All right, that's good. Really appreciate being here, the opportunity to teach, and I think it's a sign of a really healthy church when the pastor isn't the one teaching all the time. I think that's great that that responsibility is passed around and shared, and I'm really excited that Nate's here too. It's a real honor that CM gets to be a part of that kind of stuff. That's who we are. We're a missionary organization. We are driven by the Great Commission. All right, in Matthew, Jesus says, "Go and tell the world." All right, that's essentially what he says. And CM, that's what we do. We plant churches all over Iowa. Over the last 65 years, we've started over 30 churches. Another thing we do is we help churches get healthy. We provide some teaching and some training, and we help churches move towards health and wholeness. And obviously, we help with the residency. We train people, equip people, and send people to do ministry. Now, we're a missionary organization, but usually when I say missionary, people think somewhere else. I'm talking right here in Iowa and all the states surrounding us. This is where our mission field is. Anybody know that this is a mission field? Yeah, it is. Our community is right here, a mission field. I love that that's the work we get to do. The way I talk about the work we do at CM is that we are growing churches today to bring generations alive in Christ tomorrow. My wife is a school teacher, and the way I like to think about it is this, is that the kingdom work we're doing today is really so that the kids in her class, her 4th and 5th grade, 6th grade, that they're going to have churches to go to when they grow up. Aren't we lucky that some people that came before us did that? And that's how we have churches to go to now. And so that's how I talk about CM stuff and what we do. Everything we do at CM, though, is done on faith. Faith in God the Father, the one who created everything out of nothing. Faith in Jesus Christ, his Son, the Messiah who came to reconcile the world to himself. Faith in the Holy Spirit, who is our ever-present teacher, always guiding us and teaching us. We are an agency built on faith. People faithfully give and have done that for decades, and that's how we're able to do the work that we do. You guys have been in a series about faith, I think, haven't you? The faith of Abraham. I want to talk a little bit about faith. I want to really get clear about what I'm talking about when I'm talking about faith, all right? There's this passage in Luke. It's Luke 17:6. It's up on the screen there for you. When I'm talking about faith, I'm not talking about just this idea that I agree that God's out there. I'm talking about faith that actually does stuff. Faith that's visible, tangible. Jesus is talking about faith in Luke 17:6. And he says this. He says, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it will obey you. When I'm talking about faith, I'm talking about that kind of faith. Anybody ever experienced anything like that before? I mean, where you just prayed and meant it and it came to pass. Somehow something happened. Miraculous things happened. Yeah, I've prayed like that. I've seen that happen before. I remember this. I remember we lived in Clare. You guys know where Clare's at? It's not too far away, all right? So we bought a house in rural Clare. We lived there for about 15 years. And I remember one day on this little room that we built onto the house, I remember telling my wife that I could say, be uprooted and planted in the mountains, and our family will be there. I don't know about you, but I love the mountains, and I grew up a little bit skiing and stuff, and when I was in my early 20s, I longed to be in the mountains again, and I prayed that prayer, and I meant it, and you know what God did? God called my family from where we were at to Laramie, Wyoming, and I got to be part of planting a church in Laramie, Wyoming. And we lived in the mountains, and we had season pass at the ski area, and I got to preach the gospel and make a bunch of friends. And when I'm talking about faith, I'm talking about mountain-moving faith, life-changing faith. Not talking about just thinking the right things. I think of another passage, speaking of faith. I'm talking about faith like you find in the book of James. You guys know the book of James? James is the half brother of Jesus. Let's see if I can find the book of James here. You guys got a Bible in front of you there? Somebody help me out. Isn't James right after Hebrews? Is that where it's at? One of you kids know this, right? James is right after Hebrews. All right, so if you get to the back of the Bible, go left a little ways, you'll find James, all right? It's a short little book. I really like James a lot. Um, James is Jesus' half brother, and he had a nickname. Anybody in here have a nickname? Yeah, all right, great. Nicknames are great, aren't they? I love nicknames. James's nickname, for as far as we can tell from some of the commentaries I read, is Camel Knees. Not a very nice nickname, is it? But if you understand some of what's behind it, he's called Camel Knees because he prayed so often that his knees, they didn't look very pretty. He was on his knees a lot. James was a man of prayer, and James knew something about faith. James knew something about faith. Let's go to James 2, verses 14 through 16 here. All right? James 2, verse 14. James is talking about faith here, and it's faith and deeds. And maybe you've heard this passage before. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such a faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Am I doing something here? Let me move that around. I don't know if that's distracting you, but I could hardly read. Is that better? Is it? Okay, because I still hear like horses are coming, man. I'm like on the stage a little scared about this. Okay, I'll keep going. No, I can't. I can't do it. I can talk loud, or you just mic, whatever you're gonna do. My bad. User error. No. I love that I get to work with talented people who know how to deal with these things because I don't. Hold on. Really? Yeah. Okay, hold on. Turn it on. Okay, you're gonna turn it on. Okay. All right. Microphones are important. Ready? Is it on? This doesn't take away from my 45 minutes of teaching time, does it, Dylan? No. Just kidding. Who told me 22? All right, Dylan was like 22, Chad. Okay, can you guys hear me not? We good? No? Yes? All right, very good. Where was I? James. Let's go to James chapter 5 next, 17, all right? James 5:17. Lost my spot. It didn't take me a minute. So I like the book of James. I like the lessons that are there. I like the challenges that are there. James chapter 5, 17 and 18. James is talking about prayer. He's talking about faith. And he's talking about real profound stuff. Not stuff that you just think, but stuff that manifests itself in the physical world in a way that we can see it and know it. And he says this. He says, Elijah was a human being, even as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. Again he prayed, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth produced its crops. My brothers and sisters, if one of you should wander from the truth and someone should bring that person back, remember this: whoever turns a sinner from the error of their ways will save them from death and cover over multitude of sins. That's how he ends his letter. I love this idea of faith. It permeates James so much in the New Testament and permeates the life of Abraham. So you guys got a good feel of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about faith, right? Let's go to Hebrews chapter 11. That's where I'm going to be teaching from today. And let's take a look at what it has to say about faith. All right? Hebrews chapter 11. Just a little way to the left of James. Trying to get there. Maybe I should use my U version. Maybe you guys have heard this before. Hebrews 11, 1 through 7. I just want you to get a definition. I want us all to be on the same page about what faith is, all right? Hebrews chapter 11. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. For by faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was made not out of what was visible. By faith Abel brought God a better offering than did Cain. By faith he was commended as righteous, when God spoke well of his offering, and by faith Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. By faith Enoch was taken from this life, so that he did not experience death. He could not be found, because God had taken him away. For before he was taken away, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with the faith. You know, we are people of faith, right? People of faith. You guys get an amen out of that one? I'm a person of faith. I lead an organization of faith. I get to go around and talk to communities of faith. We are people of faith, but I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid that in our time and in the church, you know what we want? We want cheap faith. We want easy faith. I don't know that we really want to do like what we read about in Scripture. I think that we like this idea of, I have faith, I just believe in God. I think the right things about God, and there's my faith. I don't want to settle for that. I don't want to say that's all right, because I don't think that that's what Scripture is. I don't think that's the way Scripture lays it out. I don't think that's the way it talks about it. I don't think that that's what Jesus expected. I think that Jesus expected faith to cost us something. I think Jesus expected faith to reveal itself, that this unseen thing about us to reveal itself in the physical world. I had my own tent today, but I had to ask Dylan for backup, but I got backup. So I got a tent here. And I want you guys to really get your hands on faith, all right? I want you to walk away from here today with something in your hands, all right? Anybody gone camping before? Yeah, okay, great. Okay. Anybody stayed in a little dome tent before? Okay, great. All right, so now dome tents are really good, right? I mean, if it's a nice weather day, then the dome tent is great. Anybody stay in a dome tent when it was pouring down rain? Okay, I got a story I want to tell you, all right? And this is going to lead into faith. We're going to get there, right? So we went over to Lake Cornelia, me and my family, when we had little ones. We had six little kids, all right? We had all of them, and we packed all of our stuff, and we went over to Lake Cornelia and took the boat over there. This was years ago. Took the boat over there and set up the tent and everything, and I'm a trooper, understand this, all right? And about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it poured down rain, and everything we had 2 tents, everything was soaking wet. But I'm a trooper, and I'm prepared too, all right? I got the rope out of my little camping thing, and I strung it up across the trees, and I hung our sleeping bags up and our blankets up, and we went boating. And then about 6 o'clock at night, guess what it did? It poured rain again. I'm not that much of a trooper. You know that you can take one of these things and just cram it up in a ball and throw it in your boat and leave in about 20 minutes? That's what we did that night. I want you to understand that it's easy to go camping when things are good and they're easy and it's nice out, but that's not always the way it goes. You know, Abraham, who we're looking at today, the father of our faith, he went camping. You know that, right? See, Abraham lived in a nice community where he had a nice, strong house, and he had family, and he had support, and he had position, and he had influence. And God spoke to Abraham, and God said, I want you to go. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly where I want you to go. I just want you to go. I want you to leave all of this comfort, all of this stuff. God says, I want you to go. And God was calling Abraham to a faith that cost something. That cost something. That cost safety and security and predictability and stability. God called Abraham to pay a price, and Abraham did. It's a pretty amazing deal. In Hebrews chapter 11, it's really profound. Right after this, what I just read about faith, it starts in on Abraham. It says this, it says, by faith Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance. You guys see that word, the NIV? That next word right after inheritance, it says he did what? He obeyed. He obeyed. Me and Nate were talking this morning about this, and I think all of us have this idea that, well, God spoke to Abraham in such a way that he couldn't say no, And if God would speak to me the way he spoke to Abraham, I'd obey too, right? Right? I think it's easy to tell ourselves that, but the truth of the matter is this. I think that God spoke to Abraham in a whisper just like he usually speaks to us. I don't think that when it says that God spoke to Abraham, I don't think that the seas parted and the clouds moved out of the sky and then God was floating above and told Abraham, go, Abraham. I think it was much more like, I got a plan for you and I want you to go. You ever hear God? Does he speak to you like that? He speaks to me in a real quiet way most of the time. And once in a while he's hit me over the head, but usually it's a soft and gentle nudge. It's a word, it's a phrase, it's a picture. And in my heart, I know it's his voice. I know it's him. But it still takes a lot of faith to go do what he says to go do. When I lived in Clare and we were getting ready to move to go to seminary, it took a lot of faith. I knew God had called me. I knew that I was supposed to go. But it still took a lot of faith. There was a lot of unknown. Moving my family to a community I didn't know, to go do stuff I didn't know about, to be with people I didn't know. What we did is nothing compared to what Abraham did. At least I live in a world that's fairly safe and secure. I wasn't worried about my life or my children's life. I think when Abraham gets told to go here, that he is risking his life. Because traveling at that time was different than it is now. I want you to understand not only how risky it was, but what he was giving up and what he was moving into. Look at the next. So, start verse 8. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as an inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. And then verse 9, by faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents. I had a tough day or two in a tent. You know that it says right after this, it said that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived in tents. And he left this secure community of his father, and he followed God, and he went out into the wilderness, into the unknown, and for one whole generation, his whole life, this is what he lived in. One of these. And you know why he did? Because God said go. And something happened in that one lifespan. Something happened because not only did he do that, his son did that. His son did a whole generation in a tent. And somehow Abraham communicated to his son that God spoke and God made it clear and that God made promises. And his son held on to those promises and lived like that. But guess what? It goes beyond that. His grandson then did this too. I mean, I think that we can read these things and we miss the depth of this. And in our time, we want microwave faith, man. Hey, I gave 10% last week, and I need God to show up next week and show me why that was a good idea. We want microwave faith. We want it to be cheap and fast. We want it to be easy. And when it's not cheap, fast, and easy, we get confused. I want you to know who you come from. I want you to know the kind of things that the ancestor of your faith did. 3 generations living in a tent. And I had a couple bad days in a tent. And I packed it up and I went home, and I want you to know this, that he didn't go home. And he could have. He could have turned around, he could have packed it all up like I did at Lake Cornelia. Probably couldn't have thrown it in a boat like I did. He could have packed it up at any point in time and could have went back home. I have no doubt about it. But he didn't. You see, he was a man of faith and not just thinking the right things about God. His faith made manifest in the world. It was manifested in his family. It was manifested in his children and his grandchildren. It was manifested so well that generation after generation after generation after generation, that faith has been passed down until it got to you today. Think about that. Think about that. Think about how much belief and certainty and we are people of faith. We are living in a time of faith. We are waiting to. You know that? See, Abraham was waiting for the promised land, but we're waiting too. You know, and everything when Abraham was waiting for the promised land didn't turn out the way he wanted it to. We read about the stories and the mess and the trouble, the trials and all that. But guess what? We are those people too. You've been disappointed lately? Is life hard? Does it hurt for you? Man, I had a stretch a couple weeks ago that this is what was going on, all right? I had a friend who's got diabetes who got his leg cut off right here. Went and saw my friend at the hospital. I got a friend who I love dearly, whose son is the same age as my son, my youngest son. And you know what he got? His son got a leukemia diagnosis recently. I got a friend who sold everything and went to start a church, and guess what? The church isn't making it. I got a couple other issues too, you know. I got my own things too, you know. Man, last week my wife went to the doctor and we got to go in for surgery again on Tuesday. Cancer. Not little things. I mean, we live in the midst of mess and trouble and struggle, and it's not a lot different than living in the tent, you guys. But we live in the tent in faith in God that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. Exactly what Abraham did. And our faith isn't something that we just think. It's something we live and we do and we show the world. And we show our kids and our grandkids. And if we're lucky, our great-grandkids. Let me read a little more of Abraham to you here. I just love this part. He obeyed and went, and even though he did not know where he was going, by faith, he made his home in the promised land. Like a stranger in a foreign country, he lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God, and by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, and here's the miraculous thing in his life, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. See, Abraham is the father of our faith because when God said something to him, he believed. He didn't just think it, he lived it. He believed that God was going to do this. When Abraham was old and didn't have any descendants, God promised him he was going to, and God was faithful, and it happened. You know, I read somewhere or watched a video somewhere recently. They tried to number the stars in the sky. And what they said was, their best guess is 27, the number 27, with 27 zeros behind it is their best guess at the number of stars in the sky. I can't even tell you what that number is. 27 zeros behind it. We are all descendants of Abraham. He is the father of our faith. Faith got to us through Abraham, passed down to generation to generation to generation. We are people of the promise. We are people of faith. And we're living our faith out. We are living out. We ain't in the promised land yet. Anybody feel like you're living in the promised land? Nope, me either. I feel like I'm living in one of these a lot of days. I got news for you, though. The promised land's coming. This earth is not our home. God promises some things. You know, God's got a lot of promises in this book over here. God's got a lot of promises over here. Tells us about how things are going to be, how things are now, but how they're one day going to be. Let me read a couple more verses, then I'm gonna go somewhere and I'm gonna share a couple of the promises with you. All right. Verse 13. And these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. And then this. These words are comfort to my soul, man. And I hope that you feel this way. All right? Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Do you know that that's us? God is not ashamed to be called our God, and he has prepared a city for us. Do you know that? While we're living in these little dome tents right now, there's something better coming. Hang on. Just like Abraham knew that something better was coming too, that God had spoke to him, and he told him, and Abraham knew with all his heart that God was going to fulfill it. I believe it too, that God has spoke and he has promised something better, that in the midst of the struggles of this life, there's something better. And we're laboring and straining and stretching for that future. And we pay the price here and now because that's what we do. That's what people of faith do. Our faith produces something visible in this world. Let me go to you guys know the last book of the Bible, right? Yeah, Revelations, that's right. Yeah, let me use my YouVersion. You guys got any of that? You got that YouVersion app on your phone? I got the YouVersion app on my phone. I love that thing. I can find any book in the Bible in no time. Yep, Revelation chapter 21, all right? You know, at the end of the Bible, there's some beautiful promises, there's some beautiful stories, and it's a story of how things are going to wrap up, that one day God is going to bring completion to this whole process that started in Genesis. This is what it says, Revelation chapter 21, verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes." You had heartache in this world? Have you had struggle? Have you had pain and loss and sorrow? I want you to know that God sees and he knows, and he promises that one day, all of this mess will be taken care of. It'll be made right, and God will wipe away, God himself will wipe away every tear from your eye. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And it'll be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. I want you to know that we are living in a tent right now, that we are waiting for the promises of God, just like Abraham was waiting for the promises of his God in his day. And that we take our place and that we declare to the world who we serve, and our faith manifests itself in this world. See, we're people of faith, and faith isn't something that
is just in our head. It's something that reveals itself in the world. And the world knows about faith because it sees how we live and who we are. Just like the life of Abraham declared something, we are taking our place in our time right now. And how we live and how we serve and how we sacrifice declares that faith. Verse 5, and the one sitting on the throne said, look, I'm making everything new. And then he said to me, write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true. And he also said, it is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To all who are thirsty, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. And all who are victorious will inherit these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. Man, if it's been raining on your tent and everything inside is wet, hang in there. Hang in there, all right? I'm telling you, hang in there. All right? Don't give up. Don't quit. It's coming. Hang in there. Take your place in the people of faith. Your name is written here too. You are declaring to the world, to the generations to come, of God's goodness and of His power and of His might and of His promises. Man, I thank God that I get to partner with churches like Rockwell City. You guys got Kleenex around here? I bet you somebody's got. Yeah, look at that. I don't know about you guys, but I get to talking about important things and I start leaking. I'm talking about things that really matter, and something it just happens. I thank God that we get to partner together. You guys have been a part of CM for a long time. People from this church have given faithfully to the ministry we do. And I want you to know that those 30 churches across Iowa, you've been a part of that. And I am so proud that we get to partner together with Nate being here in a really tangible way of us training people and equipping people for ministry. You guys, thank you for letting Nate come and practice being a pastor. Yeah. Well, look, being a pastor, and I need you guys to know this, that being a pastor is like being a parent. When we went home with our oldest child, I didn't know how to parent at all. God in His wisdom trusted me to do that anyhow. And we learned to parent as we practiced being parents. It's the same thing with being pastor. You learn by practicing. And I'm thankful that you guys are part of that, because this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to raise people up so that they'll go declare the message of faith, that they'll be willing to live in tents. They'll go where they're supposed to, so that the kingdom of God continues to grow in the land of the living until Jesus returns. Man, we are doing that together. I don't want to stop there, though. I want you guys to know this, that I expect more from you. I do. I don't know you guys personally, but I know this. I know you can do more. All right? I know you can. Jesus is calling you to go just like He called Abraham to go. And you know what? There's a community out here that's hurting, that if you don't go, I don't know how it turns out. You got neighbors and people at the grocery store and people at the courthouse that need to know Jesus. They don't have the hope that I'm talking about. They don't have the community that you have here. They don't have people who love them and are encouraging them and who are carrying weight for them on the days that life isn't good. They need that. They deserve that. And I want you to know that God has called you to follow, and He's called you to go, just as He called me, just as He called Dylan, just as He called Nate. No different for any of you. And this is what I want you to know, is that one day when you're no longer living in the tent, when you're no longer living in this tent, I want you to have been a part of people's names being written in the Lamb's Book of Life. You know that? Eternity, that when God calls you, He calls you to be part of that. Be part of His work. And one day, when we no longer live in those tents, there will be people there with us because of the faithfulness of us being obedient to God's call. I don't know what your next step is. I don't know what you're supposed to do next. I just know we're all supposed to be moving. You can't be a follower of Jesus and stay the same. And if you're a follower of Jesus and you haven't changed from last year or the year before, there's a problem. Being a follower of Jesus means transformation from the start of following until the day you're with him. That's what it is. So what's your next step? What I want you to know this. Put that casket up there, all right? I got a picture of a casket. All pastors do that, right? I want you to know this, that the day of your life is coming to an end. It's going to come to an end. Each one of us, that day's coming. I want you to live your life worthy of the calling you have been given. Make it count. Make it count. And I called Nate up the other day and I asked him, I said, hey, can you help me with a song at the end? And man, you guys are all thankful that Nate's here to help me, all right? Because I can't sing for nothing. I do it anyhow because I like the idea of it, but I try to sit in the front. You'll see that I sit in the front. You know why? So nobody in front of me has to hear me screech, all right? That's why. But as I was writing this message and thinking about you guys and praying for you guys, you know, the song that came to me was this one, and I asked Nate, and Nate said, yeah, we could do something with that. And so I'm going to invite you guys to sing, all right? And I want you to sing and let these words soak over you. So often a song gets in you way better than a sermon does. So why don't you guys stand up and sing these words? Maybe they're familiar to you. Nate, will you lead us in this, buddy?
Yeah, let's sing. We're going to just sing a little bit of This Is My Father's World. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me ne'er forget. And though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. Why should my heart be sad? The Lord is King, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let the earth be glad.